Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting. It is 4:30 on Thursday, May 30th, 2024. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 28th meeting. Are there any corrections, omissions, additions?
I'll offer a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes have been approved. Opening the public hearing for the new comprehensive plan. Staff report.
Dave Schnurbeck, Community Development Director. The applicant in this particular case is the Community Development Department through the City of New Ulm. The little bit of history, this is our third comprehensive plan that I've been involved with. The first one was in May 7th, 1996. That was its approval date. And the second one was September 4th of 2007. A couple things before we get started is, first off, if you have questions, ask them right away. Because there is so much material here that, we could be down the road a long way and then we'd have to come back. So do that right away. Also, just wanted to let you know that we have provided a copy of the plan to Brown County, so they have received it. I'm going to talk a little bit about a definition of a comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan, it's an official public document adopted by a local unit of government as a policy guide to decisions about the physical development of the community. There's three characteristics of a plan. They're supposed to be comprehensive, general, and long range. And plans should promote the orderly growth and development while maintaining a sound infrastructure system, and it should be done in the most economical manner possible. The comprehensive plan is one of the most important public documents the city has, since it lays the foundation for land use management and the control of properties both in and outside of the city. The city's zoning ordinance, its zoning map, and subdivision regulations are all intended to carry out the general provisions of the comprehensive plan. As far as consultant services are concerned for this particular plan, the City Council retained Short Elliott Hendrickson at their May 3rd, 2022 meeting, and they provided services for the preparation of the new comprehensive plan. So you'll note that we're almost 2 years into this process. As far as public engagement is concerned, we had over 2,400 participants that provided input through the 2 online surveys. We had over 200 comments that were provided on the 4 online interactive maps that were provided. Those are also part of the plan. We had 7 project steering committee meetings. We had 5 in-person events with approximately 100 participants or more. And then we had 1 open house where we had approximately 35 attendees. The comprehensive plan is divided into 10 chapters and is intended to have a term of approximately 20 years. The review that we're going to commence with does not include the 4 area plans. The consultant was not able to complete the plans primarily due to a health issue associated with one of the members of the team that was directly responsible for the plans. And so we'll have to follow a separate approval process for them. I expect that what that means is at your June meeting, we'll probably have a public hearing on the 4 area plans, since we anticipate that they should be complete in time for that. The plan consists, I told you, of 10 chapters, so we're going to kind of go through the chapters as we did at the Project Steering Committee meeting, and John and I are going to share that responsibility. So to start with, I'm going to take the first 3 chapters, and then John is going to do chapters 4 through 9, and I will take chapter 10. So chapter 1 is the purpose and vision, and that's on page 5. And within that chapter, we would draw your attention to the statutory authority that's provided to do comprehensive plans. That's on page 6. Definitions are provided for opportunities, goals, and strategies. Those are on page 6 as well. And that's important because those 3 terms show up in each chapter. And their, opportunities can be seem to be kind of similar to goals. And so it gives you what the difference is between those 2 terms. On page 7, we have the vision statement. And then on page 8, we have the organization of the plan. And so we referenced before that we have 10 chapters, and identifies what those 10 chapters are and what their sequence is within the document. Chapter 2 deals with the community profile. That's page 9. First part of that is a community history, which is found on page 10. And then starting on page 12, we have the original town plat. And I'd like to spend just a little bit of time talking about that because our original town plat, every time I have a chance to review information about it, it's extremely unique. And I don't know that we fully are knowledgeable of that fact or fully appreciate that fact. So I just want to spend a little bit of time on it. So first off, as you know, we have a grid pattern. And on the north side of town, we have 213 blocks. On the south side, we have 181. So that's 394 blocks that were platted in 1858. We have 494 outlots. Most of those are 4 acres. After the original town plat was approved, they added another 45 what are called bottomlands outlots, and those are outlots that are from the river towards Front Street, Water Street. It's an interesting situation because from a number standpoint, the first outlots and the bottomlands outlots, the numbers conflict. So you always have to, in some locations, be fairly specific. City block is normally 350 by 350. That's 2.81 acres. And the blocks have 13 to 14 lots per block. And we have, therefore, at least I calculated, 5,516 lots. Now, granted, majority of those are probably residential, but they're also industrial and commercial lots. We have street widths of 120 feet, 80 feet, and 60 feet. And, back in 1858, how you come up with those widths for your streets, like to talk to them about that to find out what their rationale for that was. One thing that the town plat does is it demonstrates a balance and a geometry to it. And if you look at pages 48 and 49 in the comp plan, there is a little bit more information on this subject. And what they talk about, that the founders had a keen sense of kind of community idealism, and that their ideas influenced not only their social approach to things, but also the physical design of the town as well. Then the Turners, who were responsible for the platting of the community, kind of attempted to impose their social and political views through the town plat. And their guiding principles were social equality and cooperative economy. And the social equality was expressed in the plat through the building placement and the equal lot sizes. And a second way that it was expressed was through the thematic placement of the parks and the significant amounts of public land. And the final was the street layout. Just a little bit more information about that. The Turner philosophy, among other things, strongly believed in physical education, particularly gymnastics. Their philosophy is, you probably have all heard it, strong mind, strong body. And the Turner philosophy encourages the city to preserve, protect, and provide recreational opportunities in both existing and future parks, open space, and natural areas for use by all of its residents. This commitment balances kind of the built and the natural environment, provides habitat, promotes active and passive recreational opportunities, and respects its natural beauty. And one of the things that you'll find an emphasis on in this particular plan that you won't find in previous plans, but that fits, I think, nicely with the Turner philosophy, and that is that we should utilize our two rivers for identity purposes, as well as for recreational and leisure activities. So the approach of the Turners, I think, there was a strong emphasis on recreation. I think they saw that also benefiting the community through strong families, healthy community. You're providing a high level of recreational service, and I think they felt it was something that was, very much in the best interests of the community. Chapter 3 has to do with community participation and engagement. That's on page 23. And there are two questions that I'd like to talk a little bit about that were part of the survey. The first was, what do you like most about living in New Ulm? And this particular question, I think, is at the end of the chapter. But the top 6 were, it's a clean and well-maintained community, parks, trails, open spaces, and recreational facilities, family-oriented, safety, atmosphere and character, and small city with access to larger cities. And just note, the second one again being park, trails, open spaces, and recreational facilities. So again, that emphasis is people notice that. And that's something that they desire in their communities. And I also think it's a strong recruitment tool for families finding this to be a good location to live. The second question that I think is of interest is, what should the city's top priorities for the future be? And that's on page 34. And what that says is, number 1, add businesses and shopping to the downtown. Number 2, maintain quality schools. Number 3, be open and welcoming to new ideas for the future. Number 4, encourage new development in and around the downtown. Number 5, develop more housing options and increase the availability of housing. And number 6, expand or improve parks, trails, natural areas, and recreational facilities. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to John, and he will, like as I indicated, go through chapter 9.
John Isley, planner with the City of New Ulm. Before I get started, were there any comments on those first 3 chapters? No?
I noticed that the plat was originally designed for 70,000 persons. I thought that was interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Had a vision back then.
My notice was in the layout of the city of New Ulm, when you looked at it. You had 1 square block was set aside for Turner Hall, the next square block was set aside for the government, and the next square block was set aside for the schools. That was it.
Do you want this?
Turner's, government, and school.
And that's the way it is today, right?
That's the way it is today, yeah.
Yeah. All right, thanks. So the first chapter that I'll be going over, chapter 4, is land use. And land use identifies issues and opportunities related to growth and land use, analyzes the current land use pattern, and recommends a set of possible development principles, goals, and policies. Now, if you were at the steering committee meeting when we went over the comp plan, this is the same slide, so I'm not going to go through each one of these items. But I wanted to highlight a couple things in the land use chapter that I think you might find interesting and that we're using as planning tools. So when you break up land use in terms of acreage in the city of New Ulm, the largest amount of acreage for a certain land use ends up being parks. But keep in mind that parks land use designation also includes Flandreau State Park, which is 822 acres. You take out Flandreau State Park, the parks actually drops down to the second largest land use in the city below low-density residential. So just something to keep in mind when you look at that parks number and the amount of acreage in the city. There's a number of key factors that we were considering for land use for the future here in New Ulm, and things we need to think about. Number 1 is that we had a 4% population growth between 2010 and 2020. It's anticipated that we're going to have at least 3.5 to another 4% growth in population between 2020 and 2030. So that means an additional, potentially, up to 500 people in New Ulm from where we are today, for a total of like 14,610 people. One thing to note, as we address in the comp plan here, is that talking with builders, it's hard to construct a single-family home right now under $300,000. And then the next line down talks about that we have really high home ownership among seniors, 65 plus in New Ulm, up to 77%. Those two go together in my eyes. Seniors living in their homes Those might be the affordable houses for people looking to move into New Ulm. So how do we make that balance? We need to take that into consideration moving forward. We also noted that online commerce could have a negative effect or a positive effect on our economic development and business here in New Ulm. And then we also note that we want to continue to keep New Ulm's downtown a focal point of the community. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to put an actual number on it, but as you've all seen in the last few years, there's a lot of energy going on downtown, and I think what that means is, from the outsiders looking in and also the residents looking in, they see that New Ulm is strong, growing, and is vibrant right now. So that's because downtown is one of our focal points of the community. We wanted to encourage in the future, for future land use, a mix of housing types. So low density, multifamily, multiple units in a single building, that type of residential development. I would note that in the land use chapter, there are 11 land use designations. That includes low density residential, medium density residential, high density residential, manufactured home parks, commercial, public, semi-public, public spaces, mixed use downtown, and in the mixed use downtown, we also wanted to make sure to include that has residential in it as well. We have parks, open space, airport and the airport safety zones, undeveloped property, and industrial property. Those are kind of the basis for those land use types are kind of the basis for our zoning ordinance. So when we look at projects, one of the things we always look at on the Planning Commission side of things is the proposed use, does it fit with the land use designation that proposed use has in the comprehensive plan? I would note that there aren't many significant changes to land use types from our 2007 plan. And what I mean by that is we didn't take large areas and transform them from industrial to now residential. We tried to stay consistent, keep residential, commercial, industrial, to commercial and industrial. And as Dave noted earlier, we also included in our future land use map, as you can see in the comp plan, the 4 future growth areas, which include near the airport high school area. It includes to the north and east of Walmart in that area. What does that look like? The downtown, and then the Cottonwood Street area to the south of New Ulm.
John, how come the park open space is less for future land use? 1685?
1685.
Why is that less than what the current existing land use parks open space is 1995? And future land use, it's 1685.
I wonder why we reduced that.
What page are you on?
On page 42 for future land use, shows park open space acres is 1,685. And if you go back to page 38, it shows existing land use currently,
Sure.
1,995. Am I understanding something wrong?
No, I don't think so, Bobby. Why don't I double check on that one, and make sure we have our numbers right on that.
Okay.
There might have been some areas that we had taken out of parks open space, and it might be for future residential development. And what I mean by that is it might have been open space in the past and
Yeah.
field, that kind of thing, and now it's in a different type of land use.
Got it.
Good question.
Isn't that space like in front of the hospital? That's considered open space, and if, that's not gonna get developed. But something like that, if it were to be developed, that's the example you're giving.
That would be an example. That's a stormwater pond, but yep,
Yeah.
that would be the type of example.
That makes sense.
Okay. And then, as with Chapter 4 and the remaining chapters in the comp plan, we do have our opportunities, goals, and then strategies to achieve those goals in each one of the chapters. I'm not going to go over each one of those right now, but just so you know, that's in the plan. Chapter 5 is housing, and housing provides a summary of existing housing characteristics, identifies potential demand, and provides goals and policies for future development relative to need and demand. And a couple things I wanted to highlight here is that as of 2021, New Ulm had 6,227 housing units. 74% of those housing units were single-family housing. So we have a lot of single-family housing in New Ulm. I wanted to make sure that as you're reading through this, that you understand the difference between a housing unit and a household, because they're two different terms. We do define it in the comprehensive plan, but a housing unit is the physical housing structure, and a household includes the people living there, or a group or a family in a housing unit. You'll see those terms in the comprehensive plan. We just wanted to make sure that was clear to the public as they're reading this. In the city, we have 94% of our housing units that are occupied. 6% are considered vacant, but we want to make sure that it's understood that vacant is just a term meaning that it's not occupied. Some of those might not be available to people to rent or to live into. They're being held for some other purpose. Let's see here. One other thing we should highlight in this chapter, that there was a recent housing study done by the city, and that the information taken from that housing study was also incorporated in the comprehensive plan. And one thing to note was that our projected general occupancy demand by 2030 is 364 units. The senior demand for that same time period is 440 units. So that's something that we need to take into consideration as we're expanding housing options in the city of New Ulm. Do you have any questions? Anybody have any questions on that chapter? Okay.
Well, I guess I do. I want to consider, I mean, we talked earlier about the amount of seniors in their homes versus the amount of housing need that there is. And most seniors now is kind of a conflict because they want people to stay in their homes. So the opposing part of that is, what is the city doing for future reference to either get them alternative housing so that that does prep, and that does not exist per se in this plan.
Yes. So we are, on the city's behalf, we're exploring any and all options to help with that problem, understanding that those seniors want to still be completely independent. How do we resolve that issue? But part of it is just getting the conversation started, because we haven't really had that conversation before. So anytime we're going to use this as a tool to show developers, yes, there is this need in the city of New Ulm. We're also going to use our housing study as a tool to show developers that are coming into the city of New Ulm that, we have this need, and the people are here that can take you up on that. So,
Okay.
Were there any other questions on that? Okay. Chapter 6 is transportation, and this discusses the key findings associated with the current transportation network, including the trail system, and evaluates current and future transportation needs, and establishes goals and policies for attaining a more connected network. The focus of the transportation chapter obviously is on things like safety, active transportation, and trails. And when they talk about active transportation, what they're really talking about is pedestrian transportation, walking, biking, skating, all those types of things. And how does that work together as a transportation network along with our automotive transportation network? Trails are included in this chapter, and I think that's going to be a big one that we're going to be seeing into the future. Like Dave mentioned, trails are an important recreational resource for the city of New Ulm. I think when people come here with their families, they look at our trail system and think it's great, but what can we do to improve that? How can we expand that so it's even a better system into the future? And then also focus on the pedestrian network. Part of that focus on the pedestrian network, and one thing that we're already implementing, is that including sidewalks on new development projects, meaning that people that buy a new house or build a new house, they have sidewalks in front so they can get around their neighborhoods and connect to other neighborhoods via walking, biking, that type of thing. One other thing in here that I think is kind of interesting is understanding that we have these key corridors coming into the city where there's a lot of traffic that funnels through each day. 7th North, 20th South and Broadway. We have 14 going west and then 29 coming in. What can we do to those areas of the city to, for lack of a better term, beautify them, make them appealing so when people come into New Ulm, they get an impression of New Ulm right as they're entering the city? It's one thing that we actually consider in our comprehensive plan, and how do we move forward with that?
Hey, John, on transportation too, and I don't know that this belongs in the plan, but one of the things that I thought about when I was reading through it is, what is the interconnection with the other systems, right? So reaching from New Ulm to other ones, and I was specifically thinking about the trails, we're right in between. Mankato's got a trail system, we got an internal trail system, and then there's trail systems off to the west. If we were to connect those trail systems, and obviously it's not part of the city's plan internally, but it's just a question that went through my mind as I was reading through the plan. That interconnection outside.
Right. So 2 things on that. Number one, we do have kind of like a county-wide trail system. It does utilize roadways and highways quite a bit. But number 2, that connection from here to Mankato, let's say, that's been talked about. That was being proposed actually when Highway 14 was being researched, the 4-lane expansion. And I think it didn't make the budget, so therefore it wasn't put in. That would have been an opportune time to put it in. I wouldn't say that idea is dead or anything like that, but it's going to be a little bit harder to achieve that now that the highway's already installed.
Well, part of it, though, an argument to that is it was put in because they have the walking trail and they connected it all the way out to the Y, and that was a deliberate effort when they planned it, so that if the trail ever came in on, say, the Fort Road to connect to Ridgely, it would have the juncture to come into New Ulm. And they also put some benches and stuff out there to connect as far as they could going out on 14, but it kind of dead-ended there because it's Nicolet County, and that didn't become part of that highway development.
Right. And good point. And I would note that in the future bikes and trails map that you'll see in the comprehensive plan, we do draw a line along the bottom road to connect by the Boisman Bridge all the way back into New Ulm on 7th.
Yeah, it does reconnect down out there, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chapter 7 is economic development, and it discusses the state of New Ulm's economy, including employment, areas of specialization, and competitive advantages, and establishes goals and policies to sustain existing businesses and attract additional economic growth, to support a healthy local economy, expand the tax base, and create additional jobs. A couple things of note in here, as you'll see, is New Ulm's top industry is manufacturing, and that's followed pretty closely behind health and social assistance types of jobs. One highlight in here that I don't think we promote enough, but we highlight in the plan, is that Brown County has the 3rd lowest cost of living in the state. And what I mean by that is that living and working in New Ulm, your dollar goes farther. So we want to make sure that that's well understood. We have a quite low unemployment rate. It's less than 2%. So we need, obviously, more people to move to the city and become employees in our community. So let's see, here's another highlight too that I find interesting. There's actually more people that commute into New Ulm for daily work than actually live here and work here. So, thinking of that, how do we attract those people and convince them to live and work in our community rather than living somewhere else and coming in? I think one of the things, it's going to be a slow trickle, but the connection between here and Mankato, I think we're going to see folks looking at New Ulm a little bit differently, and as maybe this is a community I want to live in. It's pretty close. We have affordable housing stock compared to other areas. So how do we attract those people into New Ulm? We have a total workforce of 9,041 people on a daily average. And we also note in here that the city is active with working together with different economic development partners. We're not working alone in a silo on economic development. We're working with both public and private entities to try to foster more economic development in the city of New Ulm. And what we mean by that is to, yes, attract more businesses, things like that, but also to retain the businesses and jobs that we already have in the city of New Ulm. All right. We also talk, again, in here about community image. I think community image is quite important when you talk about economic development. We all recognize those communities. When you drive through, they are simply that. They're drive-through communities. What can we do in New Ulm to provide a strong community image where people want to stop here and participate in commerce? Any questions on that? Okay. Chapter 8 is Parks and Recreation. It identifies current park and recreation facilities, recommends park classification system based on the National Park and Rec standards, and puts forth a set of goals and policies to guide future system improvements. So in New Ulm, there's a total of 31 park sites, and as part of the land use type in the city, that's 30% of the land area. We do have 7 different types of park classifications, which does also include schools and state parks as a separate classification. We wanted to include schools in our comprehensive plan because, number one, our schools in our community are strong partners. Almost all of their facilities, outdoor facilities, they generally are okay with people using them. So we wanted to make sure that's included in this plan. We have a map in here that shows park radiuses. What we're trying to get at is how long does it take for a person to walk or bike from their home to get to the nearest park. And by looking at those different radiuses, we can tell where there's gaps in the community, especially in residential areas where they don't have easy access to a park. Our previous plan only, in 2007, only looked at a quarter-mile radius. This time we included a quarter-mile radius around our parks and then a half-mile radius around our parks. And as you can see, a half-mile we cover most of the community, but that quarter-mile there's still quite a few gaps in proximity to residential areas. We also go through how to develop existing park properties that the city owns but are currently undeveloped. And then we also take a look at what are our future new parks going to look like and where do we think those are going to end up being.
Can I ask a question there, John? And I'd asked this when Tom Schmitz was the Park and Rec Commissioner, but parks that are undeveloped now, such as Market Park, and really undevelopable because of their terrain, proximity to other walking trails, things like that, they're still on the park map. Mm-hmm. What is the purpose of keeping those on the park map?
Sure.
When they're never going to be a park?
Well, South Market Park, which I think is what you're referring to,
Yeah.
I believe that was on the original city plat. And so I don't see something like that leaving. But what I would say is we need to take a look at what parks do we have and what are their challenges and how can we utilize them in a different way. So that'd be a good example. You're not going to get a baseball field down there or a soccer field down there, but is it some type of natural resource area where we could have a trail winding through and you could get off your bike for a little bit while you're along the bike trail? So how do we utilize them in a better way where the community still has access to them?
Okay.
Where is that one located?
South German, you'll drive around along South German, and between the walking trail and German Street itself,
14th and 16th.
there's several, many blocks that are, and if you take the walking trail, you'll see it's undeveloped. People have concrete dumped in there, there's creeks running through it. It's quite a water issue, and it's steep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Good point. We have actually taken a look at that park in particular. That top part that you're talking about, it actually
Right.
goes up before it drops straight back down towards the bike
Right.
trail. That was pushed when they made the road and never cleared out. So one of the things you could do is take that off. It would change the dynamic and the use of that park, but the park is generally located between 16th South and 14th South and German,
yeah.
roughly in that area.
Okay.
Okay. Oops. Chapter 9 is community facilities and utilities. It discusses the condition of our current facilities and utility systems, including water, sewer, storm sewer systems, and it evaluates current and future needs and provides goals, policies to guide maintenance of existing systems and to address future facility and utility needs. I would note that the city provides services for water, sanitary sewer, stormwater management, electricity, natural gas, and district energy, also known as STEAM. This chapter takes a look at what are our capacities on those existing facilities that we have, which for water and sewer, we certainly have enough capacity for future expansion. Electricity, we do as well, but electricity is a little bit more tricky as we expand further to the, let's call it the northwest. There might be some major power needs out in the northwest because that's proposed to be an industrial area in the future. So how do we plan for that? How do we make sure that we're set up when large users of these types of utilities want to look at New Ulm, and we don't have to turn them away? So we want to be set up and plan for those future types of situations. It also discusses our school systems and our internet access in New Ulm. So there's a lot in the community facilities and utilities chapters as well. Any questions on that? Okay. Last chapter is implementation. And Dave's going to take over from here. Let's see if I can get this off the screen. You can go if you want.
Okay. I'd just like to follow up with a couple of questions that were asked and comments that were made. First off, regarding housing needs, we do have housing needs right now in the community. We also have costs, and the costs of housing right now have a major impact on our abilities to meet, some of our housing needs. Now, that's not going to be forever, but right now, that's kind of the situation that we're in. The second thing with regards to the trails and out by the highway, we did have a working group, and we met for 6 months, and it was our hope that as part of the new improvement, from Nicollet to New Ulm, that we'd be able to have a trail installed at that time. Unfortunately, there was no money available to do that, so for that reason, it did not take place. But there was the hope that it would. The final thing with regards to South Market Park, we actually have development plans for that park. And they're quite old now, but it was taken a look at.
Plan is a plan,
It was,
yes.
yep, it was planned that, there's some things that could be done. We've actually been able to expand the size of that park a little bit to the north, so there's more room to work with. And as John indicated, there's a possibility of doing some things on the German Street side of the park where we could maybe push some dirt down the hillside a little bit, maybe create some level space that would allow for the use of that. We do have apartments in that area, so it would be nice to try to provide some kind of recreational land
Lot
in
of
that
children
particular
in that
area.
area, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so the last chapter has to do with implementation, and there are a number of different items that are identified under that title. We start with, or I'm going to start with the plan as a guide to decision-making. Your comprehensive plan really should be something that you look at whenever you're talking improvements within the community to see what the plan says. So it's something that should be active, and it should be used, and it should be used beyond just for land use. I mean, it has other applications as well. Second thing, the primary mechanism for implementing the recommendations found in the comprehensive plan is through your zoning ordinance. A secondary means of implementing the recommendations is your subdivision ordinance. We also, in the implementation section, note, the existence of orderly annexation agreements. We have those with both Milford and Cottonwood Township. They're coming up on their expiration date. We've had them since the mid 2005, 2006, that era, so we've had them for a while. And what they do is they facilitate the annexation of property, eliminate some steps, makes it a lot easier to accomplish. We also have extraterritorial jurisdiction. That's the next item, and what that means is that we're able to extend our subdivision regulations out to match the service territory that we have for our electrical system. And so when activities take place in those areas, rather than having to comply with county requirements for subdivision purposes, they have to comply with city requirements. Next item is targeted planning, and that simply refers to being able to do special planning studies of certain areas. And we're doing that with the comprehensive plan. We've got 4 area plans that would be considered a targeted planning area. So you always have an option of doing something like that if you have the financial resources to be able to, retain someone to do that. The next item is it refers to partners. And partners are potentially Brown County, could be the school district, it could be private organizations. Partners can also help you implement your comprehensive plan. And I think sometimes we view this as just being a city function, and it can involve a lot of other different groups and a lot more people, potentially. When it comes to updating the plan, this is something that should be done every 2 years, at least to take a look at it. I think every 5 years you want to do a closer examination. Some communities say after 10 years you should do a new plan. I think it's kind of dependent on the amount of development that's taken place within the previous 10 years. And based on that, I think then you can make a decision that, because it could very well be that you can go another 5 years without any significant impact. The final element to the implementation section is a listing of plan elements. by chapter, and then we identify action items, priorities, and primary responsible parties. And this is something that was prepared by staff, and we tried to identify what we thought were the major items in each section. We also tried to select items that we thought were, doable within a reasonable time period. And so for land use, we had 5. For housing, we had 5. Transportation had 5. Economic development, we had 6. Park and Rec had 4. And then community facilities and utilities had 4 as well. And one thing that we would ask of the Planning Commission is that you take a look at those items by category, and at next month's meeting, we would like to find out from you what you think is the most important priority in each section. So if you could do that, we'll talk about it again at next month's meeting. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay. If not, I'd like to close with some information that I received from Elroy Ubel. And I had asked him, when they founded the community, they created this park, and we've talked about this previous, German Park. And it was 2 blocks in width, but it was 14 blocks wide. And why would they have done that? And so he provided me some information from a book by Evan Jones. It's called The Minnesota Forgotten River. It's dated from 1962. And in that, he had a number of comments about the town plat, and then specifically about the park. And he said that the New Ulm town plat was perhaps the most remarkable town site plat ever made on a new frontier. And he said that Christian Prignitz, who is the person that drew the plat, had a glowing vision of his city's future. He referred to him as a bearded, blue-eyed young German, and saw rising above the river a community that one day would have from 75,000 to 100,000 inhabitants. He also said that when he drew out the town plat, that he did not design any grand diagonal avenues like you see in a lot of larger cities. Washington, D.C. is a good example of that, where you have these major thoroughfares. But that instead he laid out what are referred to in this article as distinguished parks that exist in New Ulm today. And he bisected his plan with one broad, and it's referred to as being handsomely landscaped boulevard, that being Broadway. And those of you, I grew up in New Ulm, and Broadway used to have substantially larger medians. They used to be landscaped, and they were different than what you would see in in any other community. And then the traffic needs kind of reduced and started to eliminate them, and that's something that has been lost. Anyway, so Elroy Ubel's answer to why did they need such a big park was he figured, well, if you got 75,000 people, they got to have some place to recreate, and so we're going to give them this large area. Now that works out to 102 acres. I mean, that's a huge area. But anyway, thought I would share that with you. I guess that would conclude the staff's report on the comprehensive plan. Does the commission have any questions?
I've got a question, Dave. I think it was on page 52, land use. And it says about possibly vacating the east side of Minnesota Street down to the alley. Is that on Second North? And there's one of the comments in here. You maybe shed some light on that?
Well, I think that was the idea of creating a plaza downtown, if I'm not mistaken. And that, provide some public space, provide some gathering space. It's a suggestion, an idea for consideration.
Did that play off from early on when I attended some of the comp plan meetings where people said we really don't use German Park to the full capacity or to make a thorough entry, or I think one of the consultants said make a festival street or something to hold your activities and
Yeah, and
enhance.
I think that you will find that in the downtown plan, they'll recommend a festival street from Minnesota all the way down to German as well. At the time that they were looking at citing the Glockenspiel, which was a number of years ago now, one of the sites that they looked at was putting it at that location. And maybe, cutting off from the alley all the way to the street. Now you've got the entrance to the citizens, drive-through, so that's something new that has been put in place. But there's still a little bit of area there that possibly you might be able to do something if the community thought that was a good idea. So that's a suggestion on their part.
Sure.
I was curious what kind of feedback y'all got from the open house the other night when you created the opportunity for the community to come in and look at the comp plan. Was it a couple weeks ago, I think?
Yeah, I think we received 13 cards with written information on them. Some of them, were complimentary. They just said, liked what I saw, looks good. Others had some specific suggestions as to changes, and we did take some of those changes and did incorporate them into the plan. So there wasn't anything I guess I would consider of a major issue. There were other notes about maybe grammar or misspelling, that type of thing that we also then would have changed those as well.
Since the focus so much during the early part of this plan was the 4 zones, airport, Cottonwood addition, that concept, did you have a lot of people that questioned what was going on with that, or did they understand, did anybody ask? Because that was a large focus of a lot of the plans.
Okay. Well, at the open house, we did have 4 boards with information
Okay.
about each of those areas. So, and we really didn't generate a lot of comments on that. More so, it was in other areas or some of the information that was provided on other boards. So, agreed.
To know. Are there any other questions or comments for the city?
So this is a public hearing, so I don't.
Right. Are there questions from the audience? If hearing nothing, then I'm going to either ask for an acceptance or a rejection of the plan so that we can present this to the city. Is this my next?
Okay, you actually have 3 options. So you can recommend approval of the plan, as submitted. you can recommend approval of the plan with amendments or changes. And then the third one is you can defer action on the plan and request additional
Oh, I see. You
information
have
and
it. Okay,
changes.
potential motions, all right, thank
So that
you.
would be, yeah, under item C in the staff report.
I didn't pay enough attention to the first 3 pages of this 199-page report. I apologize, Dave.
I would also note that the city attorney requested that the action you take, that it be done by resolution.
Okay. Did you want this resolution read?
Typically, that doesn't have to happen, at least with the city council, but it would have to be a per individual vote.
Okay, so then I am going to ask the commission to go back and read potential motions, which is on page 3 of the city section of this report. And I would like to either have some discussion or a motion so that we can further discussion.
Well, I'll make the motion to recommend that the city council approve a new comprehensive plan dated June 2024 for the city of New Ulm, Minnesota.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to recommend to the city council to approve the comprehensive plan dated June of 2024 for the city of New Ulm. Is there any further discussion?
So your vote should be by person,
You want to call the roll, Dave?
okay? Commissioner Schatzko?
I approve.
Okay. Commissioner Sellner?
I approve.
Commissioner Mako?
Yes?
Commissioner Mack?
Yes.
Commissioner Beck?
Yes.
Commissioner Fur?
Yes.
Chair
Yes.
Earl? Okay.
I have a motion that is unanimous approval.
Yeah. In looking at the staff report, probably the first thing you should have done is close the public hearing, then conducted the vote.
I'm
So
sorry,
I
you're correct.
apologize.
I'm sorry, Chris. I apologize. I have closed the public hearing.
I think what we had in the notes is that should be by motion, that you close the public hearing.
You want a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll offer a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Have I ever done that before? Can I proceed? Reports? 4-area plan progress report? Do you want to talk about the 4 areas problem?
So, at the present time, 3 of the 4 plans probably, were at a point where we could have presented them as part of the comp plan approval, but the 4th report, which was on the downtown, was not ready. And in part, it wasn't ready because Antonio, I think you perhaps have all met him, he injured his back to the point where he had to go to the ER, and so he wasn't able to do any work. And so they said the earliest that they would have been able to get any material to us would have been today or tomorrow. So it's just going to have to be probably next month. And so what we would like to do is that as soon as we receive this material, we'll forward it to you. If we can have a project steering committee meeting to review that, that's an option. Or we can just hold a public hearing on the 4 area plans. I guess, I don't know if you have any preference as to how we should proceed.
Well, I'd like to read them before we have a public hearing,
Right.
so.
But would you
however-
like to, should we have a project steering committee meeting then? And last time we had one, we had, a limited number of
4
people.
people that attended, yeah.
Right.
I don't know that it would draw any more people to hold a public hearing than to have it, because essentially we had our business meeting, and that was the public hearing, and
Well, what we could do is we could hold the public hearing at your regular planning commission meeting, and we could invite the members of the project steering committee to that.
that would be fine.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
I think everybody else is probably pretty meetinged out too, so it would be one final meeting and
Yeah.
not 2.
Okay, we can proceed on that basis.
Okay, thank you. City council decisions concerning planning commission matters in April and May.
Okay, at the April 2nd meeting, there wasn't anything regarding the planning commission items. April 16th, we had a public hearing on the final plat of Oakwood UMC First Edition. That's at 1630 Oakwood Avenue and 1613 Betker Road. And that was approved with no conditions. And the plat just came in, and so we're in the process of signing it. And it should be out the door fairly quickly, we hope. The city council approved yes.
Are they sending out notices to come up to sign? Because I haven't seen anything. If
Oh,
you-
really?
Yeah, I haven't been asked to come up to sign.
Okay. We'll take care of that right after the meeting.
All right, because I live in town and that's it.
Okay. City council received 2 requests for grant applications to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. Both were for work through a workforce housing program. One was to EBMD. They're the owners of the mall. And it was for $1 million, and it involved a 30-unit project. The second was for Minnesota Housing Finance, again, same program, requesting $1 million. This was by Greenlaw Homes. Formerly, they were involved with the Dreamville project out on Maplewood Drive and North Highland Avenue. And they would use that funding to assist in the development of 2 48-unit apartments. And then finally, City Council hired Bolton M. Mink to provide consulting services for a strategic plan. At the May 7th meeting, there was a public hearing on extending the compliance date for job creation purposes by 1 year for Black Frost due to their receipt of a revolving loan from the city of New Ulm. They awarded a contract to repave a portion of the recreation trail. They authorized a loan to Tri-Hansen LLC for roof replacement, HVAC, and electrical work at 509 Center Street, and that was in the amount of $103,500. They approved a development agreement with Beaky LLC, and that was for the Target property. And then at the May 21st meeting, there were no items. And that would conclude the staff report on that.
Thank you. Elwood? Heritage Preservation Commission activities?
Old Zebel building official, yeah, we had one design review come in for paint and signage at the old Pike Driving School storefront for a hair salon. They were approved.
Was that the Arabella's?
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
Oh,
that was
good.
it.
Thank you. Is there any further business or discussion to come before the commission? If not, we stand. Chris?
President, Commissioners, not really business, just wanted to thank John and Dave and you as the steering committee for your work on the comprehensive plan, as well as other staff, Joseph Stodheim, Joey Schugel, putting that together. You know, there's a lot of staff rewrites involved with this, so just thanking them, acknowledging their time and efforts to get this, and your efforts as the recommending body to the council.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. Is that your name in it?
Got another commission
Yeah. That's what I think.
meeting.